that works. Like homogeneous societies like Japan, Taiwan, China, even Scandinavia up until recently, for some reason that nationalism tends to work because you really are kind of like your brother's keeper. You look like him, right? Which is, it's a very unpopular view, but it's a very good reason why those policies would not work in the US, because while there are majorities, the bulk of the population is immigrants, mixed. It's different.
Yeah. From a perspective, diversity is not our strength. From a perspective,
I could tell you that firsthand. I come from a country that's equally divided between the Africans and the East Indians, and I could tell you firsthand, it's not a strength because nothing gets accomplished. Oh, there's the last name. But anyway, yeah, to that point is that I think even Aristotle kind of made it saying that, in order for these kind of policies to work, you need a kind of, I'm going to sound like a fucking alt-righter at this point. They actually say there's cohesion with a homogeneous society. And again, full disclosure, anybody who knows my dating patterns, I am not a racist. But once you have that sense of community, in Trinidad, we don't have that, right? The East Indians kind of keep to themselves. The Africans kind of keep to themselves. We come together for unique celebrations, Carnival, Diwali, Emancipation Day, Republic Day, and stuff like that. But the country, even the politics, is kind of split between the Africans and the East Indians. And they're both left-leaning, right? They both kind of have the same nationalist ideals. But the only difference is that one is, kind of seen as the African party and one is the East Indian party. And we still have disagreements.
Right. Yeah, because and you want to see how homogenous some of these countries can be. I mean, the entire time I lived in Taiwan, I was a curiosity.
Right, you were an oddball, right? You were like half American.
I mean,
and like,
we did exist. These what are commonly called third culture kids that are sort of either a cross between the two, or they're a mixed kid that live in a culture that is not, if you want to say the culture of their parents. So let's say an African woman married a European man, and they lived in China. Their child that they raised in China would be considered what's called a third culture kid. There were kids like me that were mixed, that were from different cultures. There was a lot from Western countries, but because of we're an overwhelming minority, accepted, integrated into the society just fine. However, you can see, how these countries function in a very homogenous manner. They have a sense of strong nationalism. Now, am I for this sort of an overwhelming sense of nationalism? No. I mean, nationalism can go wrong, but
sure. When you start expelling people and gassing people, right. It's gone too far, right?
Right. Just to get that out of the way.
Right. We agree with that.
It's just when we see some of these countries that people want to go, oh, they have these great social programs, government programs, and everything just goes great in that country. Well, have you seen the demographics of these people? Have you seen? And it's not by a demographic, not just the demographic. You got to see.
Thank you.
Certain demographics have certain cultures. It's the culture behind that.
Correct. Not
just because if you look, because we're just going to break this down. Not all white people have the same culture.
Correct.
I mean, you're here. We're going to just throw out the whole alt-right thing. Everyone's going to think alt-righters. Alt-righters are stupid because they think all of white is one big culture, but it isn't.
Correct.
If you look back in early America, if you were Irish,
you were slave.
You were called the N-word.
Yeah. You were a dog. You were worse than a dog.
Right. But you
Italians for a good part. Yeah.
If watch Gangs of New York, shows you the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Yeah, when you see countries that are demographically homogenous, it is the culture they for the most part, they will share a culture, which allows them to reach goals as a culture, as a society,
Correct.
that is beneficial to them, which allows them to run as efficiently as they have.
Correct.
You know, American.
Again, that's not the only reason.
That's not the only reason.
But the places where it does work, that has.
But when you look at it from a impartial stance, and you just look at the data, and you look at the patterns, you look at the history, that is what tends to happen. Now, can a country like the U.S. become even more racially diverse and become a force for economic growth, innovation, like it has? Yes, definitely. That's what makes America a great country like that. But as we've seen in the European countries where they have opened the floodgates of immigration, there are problems because of a sudden and not even gradual, just a sudden clash of cultures that can disrupt societies.
Correct. I talked to you about like Black Pigeon Speaks did that video about Merkel's Lego.
Oh yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I think where was he? He was in Scotland or something like that, and he was at a Christmas fair. Nobody actually knows who this guy is, but he has a popular YouTube channel. And he saw these big blocks that were gift wrapped on the streets of the Christmas fair in, I believe, in Edinburgh. And he also saw, similar blocks in London and stuff like that. And apparently these blocks have showed up all around Europe, and it's been culturally dubbed as Merkel's Lego. And what they really are these planted concrete barricades to keep anybody, running a bus or a car or anything like that into the crowd. And for me, I actually sent Amos a photograph that I actually saw it when I was out Old Year's night, going into New Year's Eve in London. They had the colorful steel arches, and the giant blocks were out and stuff like that, showing the designated areas specifically for that purpose, in case anything came running in.
For those of you who want to see, these are what they are. They are blocks in the middle of the street or on sidewalks too, right? Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. And it's been dubbed Merkel's Lego because in many ways she's opened the floodgates to Europe to bring in a different culture, and it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with culture, that these people do not necessarily respect the values and the freedoms and the liberties, and they take those values, liberties, and others to cause harm, as we've seen rapes and stabbings and all sorts of things. Like even out here in the UK, on Old Year's night, 4 young teenagers were stabbed, right? And we don't know very much about the perpetrators or anything like that. I think they were all died and stuff like that. We've had acid attacks. Now, acid attacks is something that's very prevalent in like countries like Pakistan, the Congo, and elsewhere. Suddenly, we're getting an upsurge in all this stuff taking place in the city of London, which is, it's unprecedented. Knife crime is up. Like everything is up, crime-wise in London especially. And our mayor is, spinning it as, he's protecting us and all this other stuff.
Parcel to living in a city like London.
Right. He's Sadiq Khan has made the statement that, terrorism is just a natural part of living in a big city. Minus the fact that the biggest city in the world, Tokyo, doesn't have anything like this going on. And again, they have I think they are probably the most restrictive immigration policy in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
I've seen some of the footage of a lot of their governmental officials talking about this, we'll say, clash of cultures going on in Europe. And for those of you who are kind of wondering why we're taking real slow words to really break down what we're saying here, is because we know, as some of you probably who are watching know this too, for us as in reality, Brook and I are complete mixtures of multiple races.
Correct. I am 10% Nigerian.
Right. So as I said on South Park, you're 10% oppressed. But when a lot of in these countries you don't hear about Japan talking about racial demographics, having these homogenous countries that run better than countries that are having this clash of demographics. No one talks about that, but for us, someone like Brook and I, who are identified, not that we identify, but we are identified as straight white males, we talk
Right.
about this, we're instantly flagged as racists.
Correct.
And that's why we really break it down. So if anyone comes back at us, we'll point here and say, we took the time. Because
it's not race, it's culture. It is
exactly.
It is culture. This is what I keep going back to, right? And it's ideology, it's ideas. There are some ideas that are incompatible with Western values, and especially with libertarian values of not using force. So anybody who's going to blow themselves up or run a car into a bunch of people, if they're extreme left or extreme right or religiously motivated, whatever, those are principles that we do not support. It doesn't matter what race they are. It's all about the culture.
Right.
And if it is that there is a portion of every society, immigrants, sometimes even local and stuff like that do not want to integrate, but more so they are hostile towards the dominant culture, right? Which tends to be an SJW thing, right? A lot of SJWs, America's evil, the UK is evil, and they are hostile to the values that make the West the West: individualism, capitalism, freedom, tolerance, and these other things. And these are the people that at least in my respect, they have every right to say what they got to say, but they're worthy of criticism. And when that comes from an immigrant population, it is equally worthy of criticism, because if you don't like it here, what are you doing here? Right? You could go back. Yeah.
Right.
And that is not a very popular position, and it sounds very xenophobic and stuff. But these people are not here to contribute. Some of them are antagonistic. It's a small minority, of course, but they're antagonistic to the society. That's a different class of people. And yeah, it needs to be pointed out.
Exactly.